Okay, so we're on day 2 of Mishlei 24:8. Machshavah Lab, lo bal mazimos yikra. So one who plans to do bad, a master of plots, he will be called. Yeah. Slight pet peeve that I noticed, and now I can't unsee it, which is, sometimes in Mishlei, he tries to make it rhyme. And I feel like this is a missed opportunity for a rhyme. You could have said Machshavah Lab, lo bal mazimos nikra, but he missed it, unfortunately. All right, anyway.
Members of printing error.
That's what Alter would say. Yeah, okay. Okay, so Sadion translated it as a yesh pasuk. Yesh shuhu machashiv bara, ubnei adam korim lo ish tivunos. There is a case of a person who plots evil, but people call him a man of understandings. Oh, I actually went over this in Mishlei last night, which I don't think it's possible I've never read this here. The Ri Kesfy in chapter 10 of Mishlei, in his first commentary, states this as a methodological principle, and this is just good. I mean, I think we all know this, but it's nice to see it in a Rishon. He says, this is in 10:1, on the pasuk ben chacham yisamach av uben ksil tugas imo v'da od ki gzeros sefer stamios. So the sentences in this book are stated absolutely. Rutoni, meaning to say she'en bam choma, that they don't have any qualifications, they don't have any limits. Okay, they're stated in an unqualified manner. There are many psukim in the Sefer that the intention is that they are absolute. So in this pasuk, when it says ben chacham makes his father happy, it means every ben chacham. Okay, the intention in the majority of the psukim is that they are very likely. Right. So, So in other words, some of them are absolute. It's stating almost like a law of nature. Other ones are just stating high probability. Okay. So, for example, someone who is diligent will become wealthy. Right. So that's it's not going to happen in every case. There are diligent people like Ibn Ezra who were very diligent and were just cursed with bad luck. Right. You know what I'm referring to? You know what I'm referring to? Yeah. That he has this whole poem where he talks about all the businesses he tried going into and how they failed. And the best line is if I went into if I made candles, then the sun would never set. And if I made shrouds, then people would never die. Yeah. So it is possible. And then he says, so there are some psukim that are not even highly likely, but they're equally probable. Okay, this could happen, this could not happen. And some of them are even talking about a minority of cases. Some of them are explicitly stated in this way that they'll say yesh, like the one that Sadigon quoted yesterday. Yesh mis asher ve'in kol mis roshesh v'hon rav. There are those who make themselves poor, but they make themselves rich, but they have nothing, and there are those who make themselves poor, but they have a lot. So it's just nice to see these categories here. Okay, so Sadigon is taking that approach here, saying that even though it makes it sound like a universal, it's really just there is a case where this happens. Okay, where someone plots evil, but they call him a man of understandings. Then Tергum says, one who plans evil will be called a master of evil plotting, not just a master of plots, master of evil plots. He's clarifying, because we said mezimos could be good or bad. Our questions were, what does Machshavah Lab mean? What is the actor in this pasuk actually doing? Is it just in his head? Is it expressing itself somehow? What kind of ra? Who is the victim or the would-be victim? Is Machshavah Lab a Mishlei personality type? Or is this talking about even if some stam guy decides to do this, then this pasuk is true? 3, how is, I guess we kind of, let's just make this. How is this expressed such that people know to call him this? Is he actually doing anything? That's really part of question 1. Who is doing the kriya? Who's calling him this? Why specify multiple people? Is Bal Mazimos good, like Sadigon implies, or bad, like Targum? 5, is he only called a Bal Mazimos when he is Machshavah Lab, or can he be called a Bal Mazimos even when he plots to do good? 6, so what, right? Who cares what people call you? What's the consequence of being called a Bal Mazimos? 7, who's the audience? What is the practical application? And 8, what is the Havamina? Is it that he won't be called a Bal Mazimos, or is that he'll be called something else? All right, so we had at least 2 approaches. The one that I remember the most was, I think, really fit in most to the Targum, which is that if you are caught plotting to do evil, okay, even once, then there is a chance that people will now, that will become your reputation, or at least the suspicion that people will have about you, that people will think that they'll suspect everything that you're doing of being a plot for evil. Okay. And the warning is, first of all, to not engage in this type of plotting to do evil, like even once, obviously like in Mishlei, you have to like weigh the pros and cons, but like it is, once you get that reputation, it's going to be very hard to shake, and people are going to distrust everything that you do. And I thought of an example. Yeah. No, go ahead. No, I'll remember. Unless it's a different idea. Okay, so I thought of an example, which is, I think there's an example where I did this, but not as actually plotting to do evil. I think that what really matters is if it's perceived to be evil, okay? So the example I was thinking of, and this has probably happened more than once, is that when I was teaching high school, then, there are certain cases where like I was, a teacher who was very well liked, and students, listened to what I had to say and like asked me for advice. And there were cases where students were very, very anti the administration, but like they were open to what I said. And so there were times when people in the administration asked me to like they had an idea or like a plan or a suggestion for a student that they wanted, like a course of action they wanted the student to do. And they basically asked me to suggest it as though it's my own idea, because it would be well received. So I was always very uncomfortable doing that, because I don't like engaging in like deception, because of Mishlei. I did a lot of Mishlei Pesukim. But like in that case, it really was for the student's benefit. But what matters is that if they found out that this was part of a plot that they perceived as evil, then I would be forever tainted by that, and they wouldn't trust my advice anymore. So I think I think even someone who's not a Russia or who's not even planning to do actual evil could fall into this. I think parents do the same thing sometimes, where like they will they'll like lie to their kid, for what they view as good reasons, but it's gonna like the kid's gonna view it as you lied to me to harm me, or it's just gonna be a betrayal type thing. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's not also not just that the kid that one kid wouldn't trust you anymore.
Yeah. That's true.
It's every
right. Yeah.
It's interesting because I definitely remember like in the past year or two or three.
Yeah.
We're learning Mishlei that there was a person somewhere out there that we learned that the man's a tzaddik, like he may
yes
be, it may be perceived that he's doing something bad, but trust in his
right. Oh, I thought you were thinking of another one. That's true. Also, there's a puzzle we did about how the tzaddik will find the avil. This is a Monday night puzzle. The avil is so anti-tzaddik that he doesn't want to accept any good that comes from the tzaddik. So the tzaddik will find sneaky ways to ensure that he benefits the avil without the avil knowing that it's coming from the tzaddik.
Yeah. So how do you combine all this?
So
how do you do
I think that this is the general answer to Mishlei, to questions like this on Mishlei, which is that this is giving you one factor and one data point and one idea, right? Not data point like Chachma point, one Tevuna point, okay, right? Like one principle that you have, and you need to factor these into account. Look, I mean, I'll give you a good example. Esther and Haman, right? So she was plotting to do evil, right? To harm Haman, right? Or what he was going to perceive as evil. And, I bet that if people found out about that, they're not going to trust her anymore. Now, thankfully, I guess for her, what was that?
Scheming queen.
Scheming queen, yeah. Queens didn't, it's not like she had to play a front and center position after that. I mean, because I don't think she had that much power, but like, it's gonna, it might, the reputation might stick. Like maybe Ahasuerus from then on is not going to trust her anymore, and like that's gonna, but in that case, she had to do it for the greater good, So it's just a fact that you should take into account. Is this something?
I have a completely different idea.
Okay. You had something, right?
Yeah, there was the other approach.
Yeah, what was the other approach?
The other approach, Sean was saying a lot like Sajigon.
Yeah.
That even someone who has evil like plans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're still known as like a master of like of their craft.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I found support for that in the Mefarshim. So actually we're on him right now in the Ri Ibn Kaspi, which by the way okay, so just to let you know, I'm hyper focused on the Ri Ibn Kaspi this week because I'm planning to write a whole theory of Purim about it. I'll give you the teaser. The idea is, the title is Purim, the holiday of revenge, and he talks about how the halachta b'drachav demands that you take revenge in certain cases. It's a very intriguing idea, and that's So I'm really excited about this. So he has two pirushim on Mishlei. If anyone, I emailed Rabbi Novetsky to ask him what's the deal with the two pirushim, and he said he doesn't know. So if anyone finds out why he has two pirushim on Mishlei, let me know. And it's not obviously like one of them is a draft and the other one's a real one. I don't know why he has two. Yeah.
Not like Rashi's two on the Gemara.
It could be. I'm not sure. I don't know what Rashi's is there either. But let's say like Ibn Ezra. Let's say his two pirushim on Bekius. We know why he did that. There's like the main commentary, and then he got into a life-threatening situation, and he made a vow to write another commentary on Bekius. So the second pirush is a later commentary, and certain ideas are more developed there. Or on Shemos, he has the short commentary and the long commentary. There's two Ibn Ezras on Esther also. What was that?
I think it's 3 and 13.
Yeah, they're also right. He's the Bir Hamilos. Here, let's disperse the Mishleis. He has the Bir Hamilos and or the Dikduk, and then other stuff. Yeah, hold on. Oh wait, no, it's not. Sorry. After that whole thing, is it here? Yeah. Okay. So here's what he says. So this I'm not saying this is what Sean said. Chizkiah, you got the pasuk. Is 8. Machshavah Lab lo bal mazimos yikra'u. One who plans to do bad, a master of plots, he will be called by people. And Sadigon says it's master of plots is like a good thing. People will call him a man of understandings. And Sean was developing that approach. So Sean's idea was that even when someone is engaged in bad plans, there's a certain admiration that people will have of that, and then that could be bad for people, and you should stay away from that. So let's see what the Ibn Kaspi says in his first commentary. He says, "Ba'avur sheshabach hatachbulos." Since Shlomo praised strategies in the previous pasuk, v'hu kasher amarnu sug l'shnei minei hefkayim, and this is what we said. This is a category of two opposites. I don't know what he's talking about there. Shav leva'er. Ki hatachbulos sheshabach him sheshibich shabach. I don't know how to vocalize that. Him min asher b'chachma. These are of the type that have to do with chachma. Okay, meaning in the previous pasuk, which we were speaking, praise good things about tachbulos. Those were good tachbulos. V'ulam anshe ha'olam karu ha'isha mechashiv l'hareya. Question mark? Bal mazimos. Okay, so there must be something in the manuscript there that we don't know what it is. They will call the person who is engaged in evil schemes a bal mazimos. Okay, now he switches into Musar mode, like not Mishlei Musar. Ve'ata achi b'chiri. Now my brother, my chosen one. I don't know who he wrote this commentary for. I don't know, but okay. But you got to picture him putting his hand on your shoulder. Okay. Hello tishma tamid shchenecha hara'im. Don't you see don't you hear constantly about your evil neighbors when they gather together? Yishabhu ha'ish asher kol eshtonosav le'esov hon. They praise the man whose all of his waking thoughts are to accumulate money. Who bal tachbulos lingos chovosav ulahalvos. And this is a guy who uses strategies to oppress people in financial ways. I think that's like lingos chovosav ulahalvos. Vizulas zeh mi'iske ha'olam v'havalav, and other things in the temporal matters. V'yikru chacham adif minavi, and they will call out chacham adif minavi. Chacham is better than a navi, right? In other words, they'll admire him. I think he's being sarcastic here. They'll admire him as being better than a navi. By the way, that's another thing that Ibn Kaspi, like Ibn Ezra, is very sarcastic. Okay, to the point where he'll openly mock people. He'll make puns about he'll do meta commentary on his own ideas, in the thing that I'm writing up. He talks about how he wants to show that Yosef Hatzadik was not taking revenge against his brothers when he says Chalila that Yosef or anyone named Yosef would do anything like this. Yeah. Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Is he making a pun to the Gemara that says that?
Yeah, right. And the Gemara is actually saying Chacham Adif Minavi, with some idea there, but he's saying that people admire this type of guy who is successful in business more than they admire a Navi because of his tachulos. You see that that they say that which is proper for them and for their friends. So he's saying like this. He's saying these guys will praise as a chacham the guy who's successful in business. That's what you should be doing to the chacham who's roes anolad, who sees the future consequences. In other words, praising chachamim is good, but they're praising chachma as applied to some area that is not actually worthwhile. But you should, but the real chacham that you should praise is the roes hanolad, someone who sees the consequences. The intent is in that statement of Maseches Tamid, which again, this is the amusing thing to me. I believe every time Rabbi Moskowitz quoted this definition of chacham, he said it's in Pirkei Avos, and it's not. It's in Maseches Tamid. There's two other statements in Pirkei Avos that he was conflating. There's Ezihu chacham halomi mikol adam, and then Ezihu derech asher yivchar bo. One of those, like, what's the good path, and one of those is haroes hanolad. But it's amusing. So if you ever hear Rabbi Moskowitz quoted in Pirkei Avos, don't look through it to find it because it's not there. This is someone who is discerning in everything what the outcome is. This includes in the Ibn Rishid is Averroes, I think. Hold on. Averroes. I don't know how to even pronounce it in English. Did it say it?
If you go
okay, hold on. It's gonna. Usually Wikipedia gives. Ibn Rushd. Yeah. Okay. So
who is that?
That is a one of the Muslim scholars who was a huge commentator on Aristotle. I think a lot of Aristotle's works we only have because of his commentaries. Because people forget that I think the vast majority of the Greek stuff, we would not have been revived were not for Islamic philosophy, so pat them on the back next time you see them.
I don't want to do that.
That's because you're prejudiced. All right. Hold on just a second here.
Islamic philosophy on the back.
Yes. No, philosophers, if you see them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So he says, Ibn Rushd says, this is a man whose actions are wizened, not wizened like with a Z, wizened as in wisdom. So his actions are done with wisdom. His malachos are mitukan, like they're correct, okay, are perfected, and his statements are accurate. The deos of amitim, and his ideas are true. Umidos of yafim, and his midos are good. Yeah. So he goes way beyond what Sean said. But I think the implication he's saying is related to Sean's idea, because Sean is talking about how people recognize the chachma in somebody, but they're not really thinking about how the chachma is implemented. And so they're praising this guy for his chachma and being enamored by him, but they're not really realizing that this is a bad application of chachma. And we had ideas like this last night, right? Lefi sichlo yehulal ish. Which is according to a man's intellect, he should be praised or he will be praised, but someone who has a warped heart should be degraded. And Alex's idea was that I think she said that you should praise intelligence, but if the person is applying the intelligence in ways that are not good, that's the warped heart. And she didn't say this, but Rabbeinu Yonah is often a fan of saying that lave means midos. So if you're applying it with warped midos, then you should degrade the person, So I think the overall message is the same. Yeah. So that was Sean's idea combined with the Ibn Kaspi. Yes.
So what's the practical application of that?
So the practical application is, I think that you need to be. Sorry, I just thought of an example in Harry Potter. The scene, I don't remember in the...
I've never seen it already.
Before book 5?
Oh yeah, it's in book 1. So I don't even know if it's in the book, but I know it's in the movie when Ollivander is selling the wands to Harry, and when you hear Ollivander talking about Voldemort, right? That do anyone know the line that it's he does that he was capable of terrible things, great things, but terrible things. You could see he has that admiration for what Voldemort did. I think being aware of that in yourself, and there's a whole literature on don't worry. It's basically Darth Vader, same character. No, but
you must not be.
Yeah. There's a whole thing about Plato or Socrates in the Republic was against in designing the city, the perfect city, was against putting on plays and having drama that glorifies bad men. And anyone who's watched something like Breaking Bad, or I think for me, the time I actually got caught up in this was in the first seasons of House of Cards, when you see he's a very Mishleic operator in the sense of like this political guy who was like scheming his way to the top, and like you admire the moves that he makes, and since he's the main character, it's hard not to identify with him. At least in Breaking Bad, it was like good motives initially. This one was like bad for the whole time. So like if you identify with and look with admiration towards these people, it's going to distort. It's going to create an unhealthy flow of energy towards chachma applying to the wrong areas, I think. Similarly, also, I think there are lots of chazals about not praising Rishayim, and even like Yisurim, I think. Yeah. Okay. Next idea. Oh, you had another idea, right?
Oh, I was just gonna say that it's like a diet version of this idea, maybe.
A what version?
Diet.
Oh, diet version of this idea. Okay.
Yeah. So it's also based on where side to go. That sometimes a person might can you go back to the
yeah.
Just want to see. Sometimes a person is planning something that is evil, and if people were to really think about it, they'd be like, "Oh, that's evil."
Yeah.
But like for whatever reason, they appreciate it as like, wow, this person has like really good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I was thinking about. That's like Haman.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the middle part of the Megillah, I think Achashverosh thought that Haman was an ish tavuna.
Yeah.
And I think then towards the later part, it came out, which might be the next, what happens after that. But,
yeah.
But there is a phenomenon of someone that you're like, this person is clearly evil.
Yeah.
But like people are like, wow, that's really...
right. The term people use, evil mastermind. Right, mastermind is the praiseworthy quality. I think that master mizimos, right, bal mizimos. Yeah. A good example of this is that I think of that I'm sure really was the idea that Sean was saying, the Ibn Kasbi was saying. I'm sure this really like applies in the certain areas of like the Arab world. Osama bin Laden was a real bal mizimos, right? I mean, like I remember even as a high schooler when 9/11 happened. And I saw George W. Bush calling him a coward. I was like, dude, like this guy was a genius. I mean, in pulling off 9/11, Now it was a genius for evil, but I think that there are going to be a lot of people who are more prone to the anti-West or anti-America like value system who are going to like fall into this trap, Okay, let's actually look at Sadigon's פירוש, right? And just methodological reminder. I treat his Targum as a separate commentary from his פירוש because sometimes we get a good idea from his Targum, but like the idea from his פירוש is like, radically different than what we thought or like not as satisfying. So he says, Zeb Inyane To'im. This is in regards to To'im. Let's see what Kafach says here. To'im. Efshar Haleitzim. Okay, it's possible that it is Leitzim. I think the reason why he says that is the next pasuk talks about a Leitz. Okay, so he says this is talking about people who stray. The Einze Klali El Yehudi. So this is not a universal. This is a specific case. Amar Yesh Rabim Mibnei Adam Shematrosehem V'Kavnosehem L'Resha U'L'Ra. There are lots of people whose goals and intentions are for evil and harm. V'Hahamon Choshim Osam B'Makom Bale Hatvuna V'Hatahora. And the masses think of these people as people who possess a pure understanding. Ki Mizima Umzimos Etzlam L'Shvach. Because these types of plots to them are praiseworthy. Omerata, he says now, Al tite b'mesha tishma es hahamon omrim alav ad shetachakruhu ata. Don't believe what the masses say about them until you investigate them. Okay, so to pair that with the Ri Nachmias, who gives a lot of commentary here. By the way, Rabbeinu Yonah does not comment on this in Mishlei. We thought he did, but it's the footnote brings down in Avos, and I'm not interested in doing that yet unless we have more time. So if you look at the Ri Nachmias, let's see. He says, yeah, here we go. In Davar Acher with the footnote 10, on the right column. He says, Davar Acher, Tama Pasuk, the meaning of the Pasuk, Kama Nashim Yesh Machashim L'Harav, V'Korim L'hem Habrios Bal Mizimos. This might be Sadigon, actually. They contribute to the Meiri. There are many people who plot evil, and people call them Bal Mizimos, I think meaning in a good way. And this is Lahaz here. This pasuk is warning you, that a person should test his fellow before he joins with him. Okay, I don't even think this means friendship necessarily. Before you partner with him, and you should not rely on what people say about him. So good example of this is, I think that this is probably very common, where you see someone who's very successful in business, and you do see signs of of craftiness and cleverness, and you interpret that to mean that they're just a business genius, but really they are involved in illegal activity, and that's part of their success. So don't just rely on the fact that people talk about them as though they're a good businessman. You have to actually do your due diligence. Yeah.
Does it work on the flip side? This person's known as a crazy person, they don't understand anything. You're oh, I'll have a chavrusa with them, and then it turns out they're some genius.
I think in chavrusas, that would be a different category, because
business.
This is machshavah and mizimos, which to me are action-oriented thoughts, and then ra is doing evil and harm. I think if someone has, let's say, for example, I think the case that you're describing is sometimes a person will have a reputation for having out-of-the-box thinking, or some sort of eccentric, idiosyncratic way of thinking. I don't think that's at all comparable to this. I think we'd have to assess that on its own.
Okay, but if they're considered evil, you can trust that? Do you trust evil, or do you only not trust it if it's they're smart?
I would say no, given the first idea that we had. I wouldn't, I think it's something you should take very seriously, a consideration, maybe they actually are evil.
Right.
But I think that's the opposite mistake. You have to, you should take the reputation very seriously, but also it might be worth investigating, because person could have a reputation for evil because they plotted one time,
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example. Could we come up with an example of that? I mean, I like your applying to the Derek Nister, right? Yeah.
I mean, this is more an anecdotal one that happened to me.
Okay, I have an example after that. Yeah.
There was this girl someone set me up with, and I told her that we were just setting up when we're going to meet, and I mentioned that I had never read Harry Potter, and she goes, "Oh, don't worry, you're not missing out on anything. She's evil anyway." And I was we were talking about J.K. Rowling.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, oh, is she anti-Semitic or something? And she goes, "No, she's a transphobe."
Yeah.
And I was okay. And so then I realized what her premises were,
right,
to define evil were.
Right.
It's crazy different from
yeah, right. Right.
That's when I found out we weren't going
to meet. That's a good example. Yeah. So I do have an example of the type of thing you're talking about, not with a chavrusa, but with learning ideas from certain people, right? So there are people who have a reputation for corrupt ideas. And I think that could stem from one of two things. Either they actually are corrupt. For example, I think that we in this room at least agree that Shabtai Tzvi probably had a corrupt philosophy. Okay, but there are there were people in his day definitely, but even now there are people who dabble in Sabbatianism and Frankism. But then there are other people like the Rambam, where people burned his books and people said he was whatever, a heretic and stuff. I think that you should definitely factor in the rumors, but not just accept them at face value. You should think on your own, right? I mean, and it's also possible for people who are, that's a much more complicated subject. There are people who have bad ideas, but there's also good you can learn from them. And are you on the level to do that without getting enamored, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Just on that point, I remember, I think it was Rabbi Friedman who gave the Sunday shiur here, and was talking about there are two dangers of Lashon Hara. One is, obviously talking bad, that's obviously, but there's another one that's really for the listener too, because it could affect that
right.
person could be affected based on what he hears onto someone else. Onto that person.
Right.
If so-and-so is, this and that person, then they're going to start internalizing that without even meeting the guy.
Right. Yeah. That's why they say, Chazal say that, Lashon Hara kills the listener more than the speaker, even because the speaker, at least theoretically, is aware of the gap between the reality and the distortion that they're doing. But the listener, they're not even making a decision, and they're completely like almost like a victim of having this, like this assault of this, having this view of a person put into their head.
Yeah, it's like just like it's really common. Like even where I work, like people say stuff all the time. I'm like, all right, well, what's their evidence? Have you interacted with the guy?
Yeah, right.
It's like,
Unfortunate.
Yeah. So I feel like when talking about rumors, there's three types of responses.
Yeah.
The like default response is like the level 0 response is just believing the rumor is true.
Okay.
Then the level 0 plus response, because it's also very bad, is
you realize these metaphors have no bearing on me. Okay, fine. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, but I'm saying that like the like next step, but still like basically just as bad, is saying rumors have no substance, so I'm going to just completely disregard them.
Yeah.
Where like the right approach is to to take a nuanced approach, as is often the case as a right approach, of factoring in what the potential causes could be of rumor, what how much trying to figure out how much to take it into account.
Take it in stride.
Yeah,
right.
And like I think it's a mistake to accept rumor. It's also a mistake to discard rumor.
Right. Yeah. Trust but verify. Whoever said that was some famous thing. Yeah. Another Ri Nachmias, which is really good, different approach, is the top one, which is only one word on the other page. It says פירוש, כמה אנשים יש שמחשבים להרע. There are many people who plot to do evil. אלא שמראים עצמם צדיקים, עד שקוראים להם בריאס בעל מזימות. But they display or act as if they're tzaddikim to the point where people call them, and I think praise them as Baal Mazimos, right? As like they're either a Baal Mazimos of Tov or like a genius. And this is warning a person. Funny, he says that he puts the warning on the person to be a tzaddik in Sefer and Gali. I would think it's to warn against trusting a person, right? Yeah. So this reminded me of a good idea that I taught in my Pirkei Avos shiur a couple of weeks ago. Very, very troubling Mishnah. Hu haya omer kol ruach habrios nocha hemenu ruach hamakom nocha hemenu kol she'en ruach habrios nocha hemenu in ruach hamakom nocha hemenu. Anyone who the spirit of people is pleased by, the spirit of God is pleased by. Anyone who the spirit of people is not pleased by, the spirit of God is not pleased by. So that would seem to indicate that, like, if people like you, then God likes you, and if people don't like you, then God doesn't like you, right? Which is obviously problematic. Okay, so there are two basic approaches that the Mefarshim take, not evenly split, but clear split here. Is there are some who take it as if people that God cares about how people perceive you in terms of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem, right? So don't think to yourself, oh, I don't care what people say about me. I'm just going to follow, Torah and mitzvahs the way that I see it fit, and like, who cares what the Hamon says? If you do that and people end up hating you or disliking you or complaining about you, that's a Chilul Hashem, and God does not approve of you. So that's like a whole approach. But the other approach is to say that that one of the signs of whether a person is in line with God's will is whether people like him or not. Okay, and that's like a litmus test. We're not going to talk about that. Then the third approach is the Abrabbanel. Okay, so the Abrabbanel takes this and combines it with the previous two Mishnayos, which say, there's a reason why I'm doing this, by the way. I'm not summarizing the whole shiur. Hold on. All right, whatever. It says, anyone whose yiras chet precedes his chachma will last. And anyone whose, does he quote it? Hold on. Oh, here, I quoted it. Okay, good for me. Anyone whose fear of sin comes before his chachma will endure or be established. And anyone whose wisdom comes before his fear of sin, his wisdom will not endure. And then second statement, anyone whose actions exceed his wisdom will endure. And anyone whose wisdom exceeds his actions, his wisdom will not endure. Now, many of the Mefarshim say that your chachma enduring means in you somehow, right? That your chachma is going to be like, if your yiras chet comes first, then your chachma will like become a part of you. And if your yiras chet doesn't come first, then your chachma will not be a part of you. Here's what the Abrabbanel says. He says, says it's possible to interpret that statement of your chachma will be established or not established in terms of the listeners. meaning people will believe you or not, like will accept your chachma or not accept your chachma. Lefi ha'dvarim hayosim mipi anashim she'omrim ma'ad ba'osim harbe hem miskablim u'miskamim bidei shom'ehem liosam yotzim mipi oseim biyiras chit u'kishon amasim. That the words that come from the mouths of people who say little but do a lot, those words are believed. And they are established in the listeners because they come from people who have yiras chait and kishur namasa, right? So in other words, if people see you acting consistently with what you say and doing, your actions will speak louder than words. But when it's the opposite, when your words are not reflective of your actions, the words of wisdom will not be permanently established in the heart, in the minds of the listeners and those who learn them. I think that is the idiom. It's a really cumbersome way of saying actions speak louder than words. Really, it means because statements are less believed matters are less believed in statements than in actions, right? I think that's basically saying the same thing. But here's the point that connects the Ri Nachmias. Since there are times when a person's inside is not like their outside, and they act as though they are fearing of sin, and that they do good actions, and inside they have a sword, meaning that they're doing evil. That's where our statement comes in. It's probably supposed to say that anyone who the Spirit of God is pleased by, then the Spirit of people is anyone who the Spirit of people is pleased by, the Spirit of God is pleased by. Even though these people, they're okay, I don't know. He's quoting another idiom here. I think he means that like.
Even though this person's mouth is filled with like trickery.
Yeah, so but I think he's supposed to say the opposite. I think he means that their mouth is not trickery, and inside they have mirma, right? Because that's the case he's describing. Well, let's go with that, right? That you're talking about a person who's not tochel kavaro, whose outside looks righteous and inside he's cunning. The general publicizing will reveal his evil. The general populace will apprehend the truth of things, and the deceptor will not be able to fool everyone. The voice of the masses is like the voice of God, which I think is like a Latin phrase that people use about democracy, right? I don't know if he's like intentionally quoting that. So I think we quoted the English idiom in Mishlei in the morning a couple of weeks ago that you can fool some of the people all of the time, or all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time, right? So he's saying here that there is a certain thing that the masses eventually can discern the truth. I guess I'm realizing as I talk this out, then this is the opposite, right? That our pasuk seems to be the opposite. So the pasuk we're saying is that people will think that this guy is good and actually is deciding to be taken in, and you have to verify it. If he's hypocritical.
Well, maybe the Ri Nachmias, it works with the first thing he's saying, that he's saying you should be tzaddik b'sasar because you might
correct.
You might think, oh, I'm being called about Musimos,
right?
Like
and I'm getting away with it.
Getting away with it,
right? Yeah, I think that answers two of our questions. Okay, right. So in other words, he's saying like this: don't bank on the fact that you can just act righteous and have evil plotting inside, because and then don't get lured in by the fact that people praise you for it, because what the Abraham is saying is true, that the truth is eventually going to come out if you're planning evil. And just to be clear here, I actually don't think I should have given the example yesterday of Arnie Hammer's cannibal fantasies, because I don't think he's talking about. I mean, yeah, people are going to view you as weird for having cannibal fantasies, but I think he's talking here about actually like engaging in evil or plotting to do evil in action. I think that's a different level, than just like having like evil thoughts or having taiva thoughts or whatever. That's not machashav and mizima. Mizima and machashav are like when you're oriented towards action.
Conspiring is much.
Conspiring, yeah, right, yeah.
Maybe a better example than that would be like people who have these like scandals because like where they were basically using their position of power to cover up what they were doing.
Right.
It eventually comes out.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And there it is the plot, the planning and the scheming that people like fixate on, even more so than the actual, in many cases, more so than the actual financial damage that they do, that it's like the thing that makes people like fume is the evil of like the deception and the plotting, Okay, by the way, the reason why I'm going to our unusual commentators here first is the Rabbeinu Yonah does not comment on these here. He comments on it in Avos. Uri pairs it with the next one, and a lot of people pair it with the next one because the next one uses the word. We'll just read it, even though we're not going to translate it yet. I just want to show you in case it's. And this actually, I think, makes our pasuk more difficult to learn. Sorry, I just want to get it up on the screen. 24. It says, I think we did this last year when we were doing the lates thing. If that was last year, maybe it was the year before. Zimas ivelas chatas avas la'adam lates. So these are the word zima. And some people want to say that mizima and zima are the same word. Zima means like promiscuity or licentiousness. Mizima usually means strategy, but some people in some cases want to read mizima as also like licentiousness or perversity. So a lot of people like pair the two psukim. But let's see, the Ri Nachmias goes on and he says, another davar acher. Davar acher, Machshavah Lab yikra hakorim. The callers will call you a bal mezimos. I don't know what he means. By the Vatam al harashim shemachashim machshavos lahara. Oh, matref lekesef v'kur l'zav v'ish lefi mahalalo. Okay, so this is a good pasuk in 27:21. A crucible for silver and a melting pot for silver and a crucible for gold. I don't know what the difference is. This is where we need Sean, right? What? Yeah, I think it's probably just different words for the different devices that they had. And each man according to his praise. Okay, so just plain shot. How does the crucible function?
You put stuff in it and you heat it, and then it like takes out the impurities. Yeah, it takes out
the impurities separate from the purities, right? So plain shot. What's the pasuk? What is that pasuk saying? That you have a crucible of silver and a melting pot for gold, and a person according to his praises.
The praises, it's like filtering out like only the good.
Interesting. Okay, that's a different interpretation that I had. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it means, and I think. Okay, did I look at one of the Mefarshim this morning? I don't know. That you can tell a person's values by what they praise.
Oh, it's what they praise.
By what? Yeah, I mean, I think you could learn it your way also, right? By what he is praised for. You mean?
That would be la kesef litzaref or limitzaref or whatever.
Oh, you mean ish is the thing that is being.
Either way, yes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think you can learn both ways. So I'm wondering if he's saying, so how is he applying that to our pasuk? I don't know what he's adding by hakorim. You know what? Let's look at, can I borrow your Mishlei? I just want to look at the Ri Nachmias on 27:11. Or sorry, 27:21. See what he says there.
Does this explain what a Hebrew is? The people who call or talk about?
Yeah, but then I feel like he's bringing in the pasuk because he's trying to say that the pasuk is related to the idea. So that I'm not seeing the why he needs to say hakorim, because I thought also we were talking about the korim in the other shatim also. So he says here, nuchol lefarish lefi mahalalo hamahalal. The praise that people praise him with. That's one interpretation. What the difference is. Just like the crucible purifies silver and the melting pot purifies gold, so too you can discern a man according to the praise that people praise him with. If all the bad people praise him, then this guy's also a bad guy. And if the tzaddikim praise him, then in other words, yeah. So if you want to purify gold, you get your crucible, right? If you want to to separate the purities and impurities, or you want to test the quality of a person, you look at how people praise him. So who is he praised by? So he says, V'amru, oh yeah, I remember reading this. It tells an amusing anecdote. This is a funny one. V'amru, so he quotes in this book I've never heard of, Musari HaPhilosophim, Shar Rishon Perek Sheni, and it has a Musar anecdote about Aristotle. Okay. Sha'adam Echad Bal Midos Raos, Hillel es Aristo. So some guy with bad midos praised Aristotle. Ukishashama Kain Aristo Baha. And when Aristotle heard it, he cried. Okay. Vishaluhu Talmidav, and his Talmidim asked him, Rebbe, why are you crying? Beheshiv, and he says, Ani Boka Kishema Bashum Mida Ani Vuhu Shavim. Saying maybe I have some mida in common with this guy, and that's why he's praising me. Gami Bachin Ha'ish Lafi HaMahalel. You can also praise the guy according to the praise Shemhalim Oso Habrios that he praises others with, Im Tov Im Ra. I think that's what I was trying to say. That if you see what he admires in other people, that tells you what his values are. You know. So how would this apply to our pasuk? I guess he's saying if people praise him as a Baal Mazimos, then you can tell that he's a plotter of evil. Right, that the praise that people praise him is accurate, which again kind of clashes with some of the other ideas we went through. But yeah.
Also, if the people who are praising him are people who have questionable values.
Yeah, right. That's also true. Yeah. Okay, let's stop here. This is a good puzzle. This is a fun one.
I know we're out of time, but
yeah.
Yaakov had a question yesterday.
Okay.